Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard here for myself, for once, doing a Tournament Tactician patch 3.2 tournament tier list. Here's the skinny, right? Last weekend there was no Tournament Tactician, I was out of town, there were no major tournaments. As far as I can tell, there's no big open tournament this weekend either. As far as I can tell, there's no big open tournament next weekend either. Now, the Online League Series should have been this weekend, but the tournament organizer is out of town, so that will not be happening. We will be back on March 26th. We also haven't cast the Online League Series in a couple of weeks, and trust me, nobody is more aware of that than I am, because I have not cast much this year, and I am very aware of it. But that'll be back on March 26th. The Online League Series isn't going anywhere. We're having a little bit of a lull in the tournaments that we're kind of picking up the slack on the off weekends, and it just is what it is. But Mastering Runeterra is picking up some of the slack with paid entry, $100 weekday tournaments that you should definitely be entering, because that is where most of the competition in Legends of Runeterra is happening right now. I think they're averaging about 20 to 30 players an event. I think it's a $6.50 entry fee, if I remember correctly, but a guaranteed $100 cash prize pool. So definitely enter those. And those are really the tournaments that we're looking at, those and Fight Nights. Now, speaking of Fight Night, there are a lot of decks that we see popping up in Fight Night that are just not on the tier list. An insane amount of one-ofs week in and week out, and some of them are even performing well. Like Echo Zillion is not on this tier list, but it's won a Fight Night in Brazil and the Americas, and I believe that somebody is running it again this week in Europe. And there's just an insane amount of one-ofs that are not popping up consistently, where the main purpose of this tier list is to give you an idea of what the general meta is going to look like. You know, if you're walking into a tournament, what can you be looking to counter? If you just want to play the three most broken decks, what are you looking to do? I'm not really in the market of digging deep into the three-deck lineup that nobody knows how to play against and how you're going to spike one tournament. I'm more so trying to just give you the tools to find that lineup yourself. And if I find one, yeah, I'll highlight it, but that doesn't happen very often. And I think just looking at the lineups right now, I'm not seeing an insane amount of lineup cohesion out of the players. It's really just kind of like pick your best decks, and the best decks right now, speaking of lineup cohesion, is Triple Demacia. Yordles in Arms, and then pick two of the three between Pantheon, Yuumi, Sivir, Akshan, and Scouts is what a lot of players are going for. This week, the adaptation seems to be trading out one of those Demacia decks for just a second Yordles in Arms, because I do think that players tend to get a good idea, right? Where like you play Yordles in Arms, and then you look at Scouts, and you're like, all right, yeah, I'm double Demacia. Might as well be triple Demacia mid-range, right? And then you kind of pigeonhole yourself into Sivir, Akshan, or something along those lines. Not to say that that's a bad lineup, or that is what's happening here, but it is a good example of a phenomena that I have seen players do, where once you build out two similar decks, you think, ah, fuck it, might as well build the third in the same way, when there might be a better option. So I just wanted to highlight that. But yeah, Yordles in Arms clearly still one of, if not the best decks in the game. The Piltover and Zon version still fine, and because there's no champion overlap, it looks like Europe is experimenting this week with trying out both of these in the same lineup. Lee Sin and Darkness, basically perma tier 1, and then Faded gets a tier 1 spot because Pantheon Yuumi is the Demacia deck that is sort of beating the other Demacia decks, as Yordles in Arms will probably likely continue to catch perma bans from players that are playing the Triple Demacia mirror. So if you're going for the Triple Demacia route, I definitely think you are starting with Yordles in Arms and Faded, and then picking between Scouts and Sivir Demacia, and just kind of going from there. The other sort of lineup that we're seeing relatively often is, I think right now it's triple aggro, Spiders, Bandle Burn, and Pirate aggro. We saw What Am I succeed with that in Fight Night in the Americas, the one player to take down the triple Demacia Menace, followed by, there's a European player playing it this week. I'm not up to date on how the tournament is happening because it's currently going on, but there is somebody that is running back that same lineup right now. So those seem to be the two big ones, and then there's obviously always going to be the control lineup. That will be something along the lines of Lee Sin, Darkness, and Bandletree. That's what it was at the beginning of a Curious Journey. It's probably changed a little bit since then, but because it's so preferential, you know, it really is up to the player. But, you know, double control plus Lee Sin, or like double control plus, I don't know, any deck really, is something that is still very much on the table. And Bandle City Swain is something that players are like picking up again in a big way as they sort of fall off of Bandletree, as players are more cognizant of it. You know, you're seeing more Scorched Earths in the meta, or you're seeing decks that just go very fast around you, and they'll crash their board into yours to stat check you and then rally and do it again. And it's a bit of a nightmare. So players kind of moving over to Bandle City Swain more so than the Bandletree. And yeah, now we've covered half of all of tier 1 and half of tier 2. Papercraft OTK, we're really not seeing anymore, but I'm still a big fan of it. I think it is more so just the fact that this deck is a little bit more reliant on the Gnar than some of the other Gnar decks, but another deck that is very reliant on it is Yordles in Arms, and Yordles in Arms being the best deck in the game generally means that you're not going to be running it alongside Papercraft OTK, because they both really care about having an overwhelmed champion. Which is why both of them are so big on the Gnar. That's why Papercraft OTK isn't Sivir, Akshan. You want to have baseline Overwhelm to just slap your Papercraft Dragon onto it and kind of wham on your opponent from there. and then Bandle Burn, of course, rounding out that triple aggro lineup. I would argue the best of the 3 burn decks, mostly because it does have Gnar in it, and Gnar is still very good, even though we're talking about this triple Demacia lineup. It might, you know, sort of slip your mind that Gnar is still in there, that Gnar is still a threat, and probably the best champion in the game. And then when we're looking down in tier 3, it's just kind of things that are filling out the cracks. Field of Rush, still, I think it's What Am I is like the only person that's running this, but What Am I has been on an absolute tear through tournaments lately, so got to keep you in the know on that, maybe even copy it. And then Trundle Timelines and Nami Twisted Fate still making minor appearances. Nami Twisted Fate not doing so hot into the Demacia meta, mostly because the removal is not super great against Demacia. Ranger's Resolve and Sharp Sight are going to be blowing out things like your Get Excited, which you are already paying an additional cost for and needing to discard a card. Broadback Protector, the 0-3 Challenger with Fabled. Faded? Not Faded. Formidable. Just absolutely tears the Nami deck apart. You know, it kills your Ballistic Bot, it kills your Twisted Fate, it kills so many different things, and it's very difficult for you to deal with as a deck. So Nami TF will probably be back at some point, but we do need to get this Demacia Menace dealt with in the meantime, and then other decks can start to flourish. So, like I said, there are obviously more viable decks than what I have on the tier list. I'm just trying to give you a broad strokes idea of what the meta looks like, what over half the player base is going to be bringing to any given tournament, without sort of muddling it up with all the one-ofs. There's no real, like, other deck that's not on the tier list that's really catching my eye right now. It's so hard to steal the spotlight away from Tristana, Narn, Teemo, and that's just where all of my focus has been. I think Lux Jace is a pretty cool deck that has been popping up in BR Fight Night, but that is sort of hard to talk to the success of because BR Fight Night just seems to really like Lux Jace, and that's really the only tournament I've ever seen it do consistently well, and is very specifically Brazil Fight Night. So I can't talk on it too much there, but I do think that deck is solid. It does pretty well into Scouts. It doesn't do super well into Pantheon Yuumi, which does make it a little bit of a sketchy choice for tournaments or anything like that. But yeah, that's like the general idea of the tier list. That's the general idea of the meta. If you want more consistent content from me, go ahead and subscribe to Giant Slayer TV, or I think it's Giant Slayer LOR on YouTube, because they are putting up 2 videos a week from me, including a wrap-up of all the Fight Nights, as well as deck techs. And because Fight Nights are the only decks that we're really, or the only events rather, that we're really getting to look at right now, that is also where you're going to get a more general meta breakdown from me. So once I get into the tier list a couple days later, then I feel like I'm repeating myself, and I don't really like repeating myself. So I feel like I have less to say on these tournament tacticians than I used to, but that is going to wrap it up before I just sit here and talk about myself for the next 20 minutes. Thank you so much for watching. As I had mentioned, unaware of any tournaments this weekend or next weekend, but definitely sign up for those weekday Mastering Runeterra paid to enter tournaments. And get yourself some money. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. My name is Boulevard, and as always, good luck in your tournaments.